There are many different social programs and benefits that have been talked about in Canada for quite a long time that seem to have been taking a long time to make any forward progress, much to the frustration of many Canadians. And we're going to talk about two of them today. First of all, the state of UBI in Canada, as well as the Canadian Disability Benefit, which is actually making steps through the Canadian parliamentary system. Now, I don't think there are many people out there who would be against more support for folks with disabilities who are living below the poverty line, but I know that UBI, or Universal Basic Income, is a rather contentious issue, with some people adamantly supporting it and some people thinking that it is an awful idea. That's why in this video I'm not going to provide my opinion on it. I'm just going to give you the facts on where this program is in Canada and the state of it and how likely it is to move forward. So let's get right into it and start with the Canada Disability Benefit. And by the way, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure to do so you can keep on getting Canadian updates just like this one. Now, this bill is Bill C-22, and the goal of it is to implement a Canada Disability Benefit. We're going to talk about where this is in terms of progress, as well as some of the issues inside of the bill that people are pointing out and what resolutions might come from it. These are all the steps that bills have to go through to become law. They have to go through first reading, where they're introduced in the House of Commons and voted on in favor of, as well as second reading, where, again, there's another vote. And these have both passed through the House of Commons, and now they're in the third phase here of the committee meetings. Now, this is where they get down and dirty into the details of the bill and talk about, hey, should we make any changes to this bill? Should we clarify anything before we send it back to the House of Commons for one more vote? We haven't had that third and final vote in the House of Commons yet, but once that takes place, and it's kind of likely that this bill will pass, especially if the NDP support it, because the Liberal and NDP have sort of been working together to pass a lot of legislation as of late, then it will go through the Senate, and they'll go through a similar process, vote on it, go into committee, and then vote on it one final time to bring this into reality and make this bill receive royal assent, essentially saying, hey, this is codified in law, it's fully passed through the process. But if you've watched any of the coverage on the channel before about Bill C-22 in this disability benefit, you'll remember that this bill is relatively empty. It says a bunch of things about, oh, we want to implement a Canada Disability Benefit, we want to review it over time, but inside of the bill it doesn't really specify anything about the amount that people will receive, how they'll receive it, how this funding will be distributed, as well as guidelines for eligibility. There's not real clarity inside of the bill, and that's what some parliamentarians are having issues with inside of these committee meetings. There's a committee called HUMA, or the Committee for Human Resources, and this is where there's been a lot of talk on this bill. And people generally fall into two camps, right? People who think that this bill should be passed extremely quickly without amendments and clarity put into the bill, and people who think that we should sort of take time in the committee phase, even though it might take longer at committee, maybe we can get some more solid guidelines inside of this bill. The folks who want to get this bill passed quickly believe that the government is going to sort of talk with the disability community over the next year and aim at early 2024 as this disability benefit actually being sent out to Canadians. Sort of within a year, roughly a year from now, the bill actually becoming a reality in terms of the distribution of those funds. But the people who think that we need more amendments in the bill say, hey, do we really trust this government regulatory process? We should try to get some solid things in here to make sure that those can't be changed down the line via regulation.
We've heard from testimony from officials and from the minister from a timeline with this, which they've acknowledged is likely, taking a year to do regulations and then implementation more than likely sometime into 2024. So what are your thoughts on that from a timeline perspective, that this is the actual timeline that the government is working on?
I feel that it's too long. We need help and support now, not in 2024.
It's uncomfortable for us to go for a regulation approach because as parliamentarians, it's a bit of a void. We don't hear about the terms and to whom this new benefit's going to apply and what the amounts are going to be, because we're faced with a blank page at the moment.
So that's what the people in the committee are concerned about. And furthermore, an NDP member of parliament says, hey, if we don't actually set and codify any of these amounts or qualifications in stone with an amendment, well, then these things could be changed in the future and might not actually be able to lift folks with disabilities out of poverty.
I'm worried. Like this, to me, with having it all in regulation, it's almost like an untenable risk right now when the stakes are so high. to say, well, we don't know what the income is going to be. We don't know who's going to get it. We don't know when they're going to get it. So, what if it ends up not being enough to lift them out of poverty? I feel like I need to do something to protect the adequate income in this bill in regulation rather than just in legislation rather than just in regulation.
So you can sort of see both sides here, right? People saying we need to pass this bill as quickly as possible to make sure that the regulation process can start so we can start getting these details and get this done before 2024. And then we have the other side saying, hey, we need to take a little more time here, make these amendments to actually codify the amounts people are getting, that being indexed to inflation and the rising cost of living, making sure that amount goes up over time. We want to make sure that this is actually written inside of the legislation. So in case there's a change in power, new leadership, a new government, that they can't go back and change these things as easily just via regulation. With that said, in my eyes, it's looking very likely that this bill will pass without many amendments made, and that the people who wanted to make regulations over time, well, they'll get their way, right? It looks like that's something we're going to see, but again, the timeline seems like it's still a ways away, being early 2024 when people with disabilities could actually start seeing these payments. I'm curious what you think about this. Let me know down in the comments, but now we're going to move into this next section of the video, talking about universal basic income in Canada, a highly debated topic and one that seems to have fallen out of the public discussion. And there does seem to be some support for UBI in Canada from the leading Liberal government, the political party that's currently in power in Canada. We just last year had a bill that was proposed by a Liberal member of Parliament, albeit not one of the federal ministers, meaning those bills get a little bit less attention, but we didn't see that really go anywhere. That was Julie Zarowicz, a Toronto MP, sort of pushing forward this idea for universal basic income. And we also saw another indication that the Liberal Party is leaning towards a UBI in this document right here. This is a document that was put together at the last national convention for the Liberal Party, where all Liberal members, even ones that aren't MPs, get together and vote on the most pressing issues and the things that they want addressed within the party. And they compiled a list of 25 issues that were most pressing and the ones that were prioritized and voted for most heavily. And it seems that there's two sort of UBI-related motions inside of this table of contents here that show that there's two in the top five, a universal basic income for Canada, as well as a Canadian basic income, rethinking Canada's tomorrow. So of all of these 25 issues that were voted through and passed, two are in the top five on this issue. But despite this focus at the Liberal National Convention, we haven't seen all that much forward motion from the actual Liberal government, or at least its senior leadership, pushing forward any sort of UBI notion. Now, one of the reasons that I think this hasn't moved forward is the warning that the Canadian government recently got from the IMF, that is the International Monetary Fund, and they said that Canada should be careful with how much it spends going forward, especially in broad spending, which a UBI would be, right? But spending that's not targeted on an individual group, but more broadly spread. Take a look at this article from the Globe and Mail, sort of outlining what the IMF said. The IMF advised against new spending beyond targeted inflation relief measures, like the ones we've seen from the Liberal Party, the Canada Housing Benefit, top up, as well as the GST tax credit and the dental benefit. They say these are targeted supports, and they say that they should, even though the Canadian government has gotten some revenue windfalls from higher cost of living, higher taxes that they're able to charge, and a larger amount of money they're able to sort of collect from the population, they say that they should save this extra money because they don't want the Canadian government to counteract what the Bank of Canada is doing right now. Of course, we have record high inflation in Canada, and currently the Bank of Canada is raising interest rates to try to make people spend less money. So the IMF is saying, well, don't go giving money to everybody for any reason, because that will counteract the inflation fighting interest rate increases the Bank of Canada is currently putting forward. So as a result, there's been no talk of a UBI on the federal level, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been talk of this type of program on provincial levels. Let's take a closer look at one province that has a UBI that's actually coming into effect on January 1st, 2023, and that is Quebec's Basic Income Program. You can see it right here. Let's go into some of the details on how this works, and you can let me know on if you think some of these details should be applied on a federal level. For those who qualify for this basic income program, they can earn $1,138 per month from the program, or $13,656 for the year, as well as if you're a single individual, you don't have a family income here, then it's a little bit more, getting an additional $337 per month, adding up to an additional $4,044 per year for single individuals, as well as extra bonuses on this UBI amount, or this basic income, maybe not universal basic income amount, if you have a child, and specifically more if you have a child who's in a post-secondary where you're having to pay for tuition. And the Quebec government is income testing this, meaning if you make over a certain amount of money, this basic income gets clawed back, right? As someone receiving basic income, you can earn up to $13,656 per year. But if you make $1 over that, for every dollar you earn, you have 55 cents taken away from your total amount that you can get with this benefit. So essentially, if you're right on the threshold here, and you start earning more than $13,656, every dollar you earn is only really earning you 45 cents. This is a big issue when it comes to social programs and whether or not they actually incentivize folks to not work because of benefits being clawed back. Many people are pushing for benefits designed in a way that the income is regardless of the benefit is regardless of the income you make, so that these benefits won't be clawed back, and discouraging people from going back into the workforce. And stacking right on top of that is a number of other benefits that do count towards your income, right? Saying that this sort of all of the different benefit programs in aggregate could add onto your income, meaning that you might get things clawed back if you earn over a certain amount, even if it's from these other programs. So it gets a little bit complex, but you also have certain criteria inside of this basic income program in Quebec, meaning that if you have over $20,000 in cash resources, you will sort of start to reduce the amount that you get on this income. Is saying, hey, if you have savings, you shouldn't be getting this basic income. Saying every dollar you have over $20,000 in cash assets will reduce your monthly payment by $1. The same goes for non-cash assets like cars, ATVs, snowmobiles, cottages or lands, and other retirement savings programs, as well as property in general. They say that your main residence doesn't count towards this. So if you own a home, you can still get the full amount of this benefit, even if it's worth more than $500,000. But if you have a second property and that property is worth over $500,000, you will have a decreased amount for this basic income. So that's where Quebec's government has landed, and we're going to sort of see some data coming out here over the next year with this implementation starting on January 1st of 2023. So that's where we're at with both the basic income side of things as well as the Canada Disability Benefit, likely going to pass, albeit with not many details inside of the legislation, things being changed by regulation instead, by just the current government once this bill passes. I'm curious what you think about both of these things. Do you think that UBI is the right direction for Canada, or do you think that, hey, maybe this more spending in the economy could contribute to more inflation and a higher cost of living, counteracting the benefits of a program like that? I'm curious what you think. Either way, let me know down in the comments. I read every single one, try to get back to a bunch of them. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. It helps me out dramatically in bringing you more updates like this, and it's just a free click for you, so I'd appreciate the help there. And with all that said, thanks so much for watching, everybody. I really hope this video has helped you out at least a little bit, and I'll see you next time.